This town, there's something wrong with it. It's kind of hard to explain, but...
Is it dangerous?
Maybe. And it's not just the fog, either.
Since the release of the gameplay trailer for Silent Hill 2 Remake back in January, I was among the first people to criticize how the game looked and how disappointing the quality is. But I was also among the first people who said that the harsh criticism is necessary in this case. And it's the only way that can save the future of this game, because developers need to know the mistakes to fix them. Over the last 8 months, developers at Bloober Team were silently watching people's reactions and analyzing their complaints. And to be fair, after that infamous trailer we got, things seem to keep gradually getting better and better, and our concerns are shrinking more and more because we actually see improvement. The biggest glimpse of hope we had was when we watched the extended gameplay footage in the PlayStation Showcase 2 months ago, and it really gave us a reason to be excited despite some flaws here and there. The visuals were very satisfying, the atmosphere was on point, and the fog was everything we wished for. However, I didn't expect that the developers would be even more generous with us and provide 27 freaking minutes of additional gameplay footage that show way more details and answer a lot of our questions. To be honest, this footage pretty much stabilized my feelings towards this game, and I really need to talk about what caught my eyes the most. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. The first thing that we notice here is that the visuals that we saw the last time are indeed present across the game, and the areas outside seriously look gorgeous. The scratches and the reflections on the car really convince me that the developers are not playing around when it comes to graphics, and they obviously want to impress us. However, the landscape gets even more breathtaking when we enter the forest area. I literally don't know how to describe how much I'm blown away by the beauty of this scene, and how the elements blend together to create the flawless atmosphere. The small leaves falling from the trees, the wet ground, and the cloudy sky with the fog always being ahead of you. All of it seems like a painting becoming alive. If you know me personally, you'll understand that this is exactly how you can get my attention and immerse me in a horror game. I'm obsessed with this type of weather even in real life, and whenever I imagine the best climate for a horror story, this scene always comes to mind first. It gets me in the mood immediately to start a journey full of mystery, anticipation, and surprises, and this is basically what Silent Hill 2 is all about. It's also the reason that makes me feel that the release date was chosen in a smart way to fit this atmosphere in real life. Because, let's face it, none of us can deny that playing such games in the fall or the winter always has a unique vibe to it. So if we're being fair, we must give credit to Bloober for building such a stunning environment that can intensify the other elements of the experience way further. If we compare the same section with a similar part from another visually impressive game like Alan Wake 2, I personally lean to the Silent Hill side, and I feel it's a bit more eye-catching even though Alan Wake 2 has a much bigger budget. So, visual-wise, I believe the debate is over on this side. Bloober was actually cooking, and they delivered. The over-the-shoulder camera view is pretty much how I imagined it, and this new perspective helps us a lot to observe any area in a much more convenient manner compared to the fixed angle of the original. A few minutes later, we get to see the first enemy in this footage, and it's shrouded in the fog, which is obviously a hint to show you how the fog here plays a huge role in playing with your mind, and why you always must be careful of what's lurking behind it. And by the way, I also love how good the shoes look in the remake. Our guy is swag. Fashion also matters, you know? Anyway, the town section also confirms that the chilling atmosphere is intense across the board. The buildings look devastated, the cars seem like they were abandoned for ages, and they also play a role in scaring the heck out of you because enemies can hide beneath them and show up from nowhere. In this part, we can see a better angle of what some of the combat feels like, and I believe Bloober did some tiny changes to improve some stuff from the last time. Stomping on the enemy looks tough and sounds powerful, and we can see how the monster struggles with it. But the slight improvement I see is when James hits it with the stick. Last time, I made a quick remark to criticize how bizarre the hit looks when the enemy is on the ground. It felt slow, and it made James look like he's not using much of his energy to cause damage. In the new footage, however, we can clearly see a faster pace and more struggle from James to hit as hard as he can, which really pushes me into believing that Bloober has been listening to every critic to try to improve what they can. Exploring the stores here also seems intriguing, and considering that this remake is supposed to be bigger than the original, I'm pretty sure our curiosity is sky high to investigate every inch of these places. Later, we get to see smaller enemies in a spider-like form, which probably represent the creepers from the original. They seem weak, but you need to always stay aware of their surprising appearance. And as I said in the previous video, I really love how the components of the town are designed to make you sense that this was actually a normal place, where people lived and flourished before it became a wasteland. The tables and chairs here and there are meant to give you that vibe of visiting a casual location, but simultaneously, nothing here is supposed to be casual or safe. I seriously admire that contrast. Other incredible elements in the visuals are the precise reflections and the genuine effects of the air moving the papers, the flags, and any light material. This vibrant display hits your eye automatically and adds that special perception of authenticity around you, which is not common in all games. When we enter the shop, we get to witness a fierce encounter between James and two lying figures at the same time. The purpose of showing this section is obviously to give you an idea of how tough things can get and how you need to improvise in such close spaces to survive. When James is inside, we get to understand how much exploration and investigation are relevant in the remake. We see him break glass to reach other areas, examine what's on the tables, and observe anything around him because he might actually need something for future puzzles. As he moves on, we also see how the fog is incredibly designed to blur the other side of certain areas to keep us always on high alert. I can't get enough of these gorgeous scenes, to be honest. Every area I see in the gameplay impresses me more than the others. And when James enters the abandoned buildings, we see the exact style of decay that we imagine to see in such horror games. The rusty chairs, the dirt covering everything, and the writing on the walls trigger my brain to spontaneously wonder what the heck happened here. The footage also contains a relatively easy puzzle, but I can assure you that some puzzles in this game will surely make you scratch your head. Puzzles are an essential element in Silent Hill 2, and I believe the developers of the remake know that very well. When we go outside again, we see the most intense version of the fog, which feels very faithful to the original and preserves the same iconic effects. Then, we get to explore one of my favorite locations in the game, which is the Woodside apartment complex. The reason it's one of my favorites is because there's plenty of stuff to investigate here, and the dark atmosphere is the cherry on the cake for me. And just after James picks up a flashlight, the action starts immediately with a mannequin appearing from the dark. And this is basically what Silent Hill psychological horror is all about. It's not about facing the strongest enemies or hiding every 2 seconds. It's mainly about these scary surprises from entities always lurking somewhere around you. The lighting of the flashlight inside the apartments is a work of beauty. It doesn't provide too much light, but it provides just the right amount that you need to see what's in front of you, which is suitable for anyone who wants to enjoy the suspense of exploring every apartment. The scene we see after leaving the apartment is something straight out of an exceptional horror movie. The way the fog blends with the buildings, and then you see the apartment complex from this satisfying view. It's just chilling. It actually makes me want to visit a place like this in real life. My brain is designed to love this ambience because, as I said, fall and winter are my favorite seasons for anything related to horror. The next section showcases the power of an environment that I became very obsessed with due to the countless indie horror games I played in the past decade. This environment is the corridors. And when I say corridors, I mean the fear of not knowing what's waiting for you on the other side every single time you walk through one. Dark, winding corridors can be disorienting, making it difficult to determine where you are or where you're going.
Hey! Wait!
Another faithful element to the original is clearly how annoying Laura is. She's the biggest brat you can meet. And to be honest, the voice actor here is playing that role like a charm. After exploring the remarkably designed apartments, we finally find a gun and some ammo. And whenever the game gives you some resources like this, you can be sure that you'll need every bullet in the next few minutes. Resources here are insanely scarce, and you'll never get any generosity in this department, which pushes you to play smarter to not waste anything you have. The scene you just saw is actually one of the most disturbing things I ever witnessed in a game. Because even though it might seem like the body of a random person who died on the chair, the backstory behind it is much deeper than that, and I won't talk about it to avoid spoiling the game for newcomers. Anyway, outside we find a pool full of lying figures, and the good side here is that you can actually bypass them without having to fight them. However, since this is promotional gameplay footage, the developers want to show us some gun work, and to be honest, the person shooting here is clearly not the best gamer for this mission. Many of the bullets were wasted, but at least we see some shooting going on. If we're being fair, the shooting mechanics here are good enough for the job. They're not the best in the survival horror field in general, but keep in mind that Silent Hill 2 is all about making these options like shooting feel like an additional element in your journey and not the focus. So considering James is a normal dude with a gun, the shooting shouldn't necessarily look as smooth as Resident Evil, for example. The next area we dive into has the same dire atmosphere we saw in the apartments and stores, and this makes me comfortable to believe that investigation in this remake will be extremely enticing and scary. Every piece of the map seems to be designed carefully, and there's always surprises waiting for you somewhere. In the next few minutes, we can get an idea of how far James can go to explore different places inside the building. He can smash the wall with his stick to reach other areas, he can jump on windows, and he can also use vents to go even deeper. This is essential here because, if we're being realistic, the most important ingredient in the Silent Hill 2 experience was always exploring creepy places and discovering disturbing hints inside. It was never about excitement or fun gameplay. In fact, some of the newcomers might think it's a boring game at first until they understand that it's all about the profound story and the outlandish journey of James that provokes your brain. It reaches a point where it makes you wonder what's real and what's delusion. Where did you come from? And where are you going? And does James really believe what he's seeing, or is he just playing with his own emotions? With that being said, nothing in the entire footage we watched so far comes close to the ending, when we finally please our eyes by seeing the most iconic enemy in the series, and probably in horror gaming in general. From a quality point of view, this is basically the best segment among everything they showed in the last 2 years. You can't convince me that you imagined a remake of Pyramid Head to look more precise than this inside an actual game. Pyramid Head's design here is exceptional, and his movements are true to the original, but with a more realistic and intimidating presence thanks to the enhanced visuals. And from this encounter, we can also feel that Pyramid Head might even be a little bit tougher and harder to deal with than the original. His attacks give the vibe of a Bloodborne boss, where your dodge needs to be at the right time in order to avoid being hit by a few millimeters. However, the crazy thing about this boss is the idea that he represents. He actually looks and moves this way for a reason, and it takes some deep concentration from you to understand who this monster is and why he keeps showing up everywhere to hunt James. After this summary of the last gameplay footage that Bloober published, the real question is, does this remake have a chance to succeed? Well, to be honest, quality-wise, it definitely has a big chance to shine, but if we're talking commercially, it's a hard test that's really not easy to pass. What I mean by this is that even if the remake turns out to be amazing and faithful to the original, it's not guaranteed that it will succeed commercially if the newcomers didn't understand it or found it boring because of its focus on storytelling more than action. I explained this deeply in a previous video when I talked about the age groups of gamers and their influence on the purchasing power in the gaming market. Even though gaming today is the hobby of a very diverse group of people when it comes to age, keep in mind that statistically, people in their 20s remain the biggest target audience if we're talking about buying and consuming games. On the other hand, realistically, the core fanbase of Silent Hill 2, who played the game and became emotionally attached to it 23 years ago, is most likely people who are now in their 30s and 40s. So even though there's plenty of consumers on that side to buy the game needs to actually appeal to the younger side too, in order to boost its chances of surviving financially.
Let go!
Sorry, Laura, but I can't let you just run around this place. You might get hurt.
Hurt by what?
Look, just stay with me, okay?
I made an entire video about this when I explained why Resident Evil keeps making an insane amount of money to this day, while other titles in the genre can't catch up. The reason is that Resident Evil simply appeals to gamers of all ages due to the fact that it's always fun and exciting because of its engaging gameplay and action. The difference with Silent Hill is that it's an experience about profound narrative, psychological manipulation, and tragic, mature themes that only certain people can handle in a video game. The power of Silent Hill as a genius deep story makes me worried about its commercial fate, particularly in 2024, because I'm not sure if there will be enough young gamers who can understand it and care to play it.
I'm James.
Angela.
Angela. Okay. I don't know what you're planning, but there's always another way.
Some of you might think that I'm exaggerating, but this is literally the same prediction that I made 5 months ago with Alone in the Dark before its launch. I said that the game has two possible fates. Either people will enjoy its exploration and puzzles and see it as a remake of a classic that was never about heavy action, or they will simply consider it boring and lifeless because it's heavily focused on exploration and puzzles. Here's what I said back then. Anyway, give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and let's see how this game will perform on March 20th. As I said, it can be one of two options. It will either be a forgettable experience with too much exploration, and people will end up calling it boring, or it will be an enticing adventure of investigation, action, and interesting events. Let's wait and see. After launch, the negative option is basically what happened. Even though the game was not bad and has some strong elements, it couldn't achieve any commercial success because there were not enough gamers to care about its style that cannot be considered fun. These dire results even led to the closure of the studio behind the game, which is sad to be honest.
Like there's something I'm supposed to do? Like what am I supposed to do?
With that being said, Silent Hill 2 remains a completely unique example that can't really be compared to other titles, because you should never underestimate the power of veteran Silent Hill fans. no matter their age. Believe it or not, the number of gamers who are in their 30s and 40s is rising more than ever, and they even surpass the number of the younger ones in certain genres of gaming.
People keep asking if I'm back, and I haven't really had an answer. But now, yeah, I'm thinking I'm back!
The growth of older gamers is also happening worldwide across multiple regions. And it's mainly because those people who grew up with the PS1 and Game Boy couldn't leave their passion for this hobby behind. So even though I'm worried about the reception of Silent Hill in the younger audiences, I also feel that its insane popularity among the other demographics can actually give it a huge boost sales-wise. And by the way, I'm not saying that the game doesn't have a fan base from the younger generations. I would argue that younger people became very familiar with Silent Hill 2 in the recent years due to the high amount of videos about it on YouTube. I'm just explaining how the gaming market works when it comes to buying games, because there's a huge difference between someone who likes a game in general and someone who cares enough to spend $70 to buy it and enjoy it. And since Silent Hill 2 is a very complicated experience that was never about joy, it can really be a bizarre option for many gamers.
Thank you for saving me. But I wish you hadn't. Even Mama said it. I deserved what happened.
No, Angela, that's wrong.
Keep in mind that the reason I added this quick analysis about the financial side is because I want to make it clear that even if the game doesn't sell very well, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. I know that many people measure the quality of games by their sales numbers, but this is really the very wrong metric to use. Advertising games like Silent Hill is not easy, because you need to convince newcomers that there is something more important than just fun action. It's basically the same reason why titles like Alan Wake don't sell that much compared to Resident Evil. Now, when it comes to the story trailer, there's really not much to talk about here. It pretty much comes close to our expectations, except for one person, who's obviously the one and only Eddie Dombrowski. To be honest, even in my wildest imagination, I never expected him to look like this in the remake. Because if you understand the story behind his existence in Silent Hill Town, you'll know that his physical appearance in the remake might even be an improvement compared to the original. Eddie is intentionally designed to look creepy, disturbing, and crazy, and this is exactly what we see in this model, which goes even further in this direction than the original one. Okay, so after all what we saw so far, I really don't believe there is anything left to say or even be curious about. Bloober basically put all of their cards on the table, and they've shown us more gameplay than we can ever ask for. It made me feel like we had already seen half of the game in these videos. However, the developers recently revealed a surprise that made me even more optimistic. They said that the length of the game will range from 16 to 18 hours, and it can even reach 20 hours if you explore everything. This means that it's essentially 2 times longer than the original game, which is probably a hint that the developers added hidden stuff and some cool twists here and there to excite even the people who played the game before. It's insane to imagine that a Silent Hill game can last for 20 hours. It's not easy to create an experience this long unless the game is really full of new activities and probably even more puzzles, interactions, and places to investigate. And who knows, maybe Pyramid Head appears more often in the remake to make your journey way tougher. So, long story short guys, Bloober Team is obviously doing everything they can to make this work, and I don't think there's room for speculation anymore. At this point, the ultimate test will be on October 8th when the game releases. That's the only way to know for sure if they got it right, or if they simply missed the mark by giving us a forgettable experience. There is no need to show anything anymore. If the game is good, it will defend itself by itself. But if it flops, I have a feeling that it might kill the revival of Silent Hill as a whole. I believe Konami is putting all their hopes on this remake to open the door for more Silent Hill games in the future, and its failure might mean another decade of silence, just like what happened after Downpour. Anyway, Give me a like if you enjoyed the video, and tell me what you really think about the remake's fate and whether you are hopeful or not. See you very soon.
In my restless dreams, I see that town, Silent Hill.